In this video we're going to talk about density. There's a lot of different embroidery terminology out there, and I think it's good if everybody kind of is on the same page. Reminds me of something that's happened years and years while doing digitizing for people. Somebody would say something we had digitized, they wanted it to be thicker. And anytime I think of thicker, I use this design here. It's a very simple design on the screen. When I think of thicker, I think of column width or pull compensation. Thicker would be side to side, this column to be wider. Where actually what they were meaning was they wanted more density in the design. So we're going to kind of define what density is and show you how it's measured and give you a few suggestions on what I consider the correct density for your average embroidery. There's always exceptions both ways, but let's get into what actually density is. Years ago, density was measured in stitches per inch, and it made a lot of sense to a lot of people that way. You make a higher number, more stitches per inch, you had more density. Well, over the years, they went to an absolute measure that is kind of backwards from the way a lot of people think. And that's why the smaller number now means more density, and I'll show you why. This is just a capital I in Arial block that I have stitched here on the screen, and I set it at the default density from the Floriani software, which defaults to 0.5. For whatever reason, it seems like that's way too light for anything I would ever sew, but that's what it defaults to. So if we select this eye, we will see over here under fill that density right there is 0.5, which what that means is that's a half of a millimeter between stitches. So if we take our ruler here and we measure between this stitch and this one down here, we'll see that is 1/2 of a millimeter. So that is our effective density down through here is 0.5. So if we take this and we go over here and we change this down to 0.4, you can see they got a little bit closer. And we take our ruler and we measure, our density is now 0.4. There is more stitches in the design now than there was when there was 0.5 because we have pushed each needle penetration closer together. There is now only 4/10 of a millimeter between each needle penetration. Again, the needle penetrates right here at these points. I've got that turned on. They're not very big dots, but you can see them there. So ideally though, I think that's even too light for most embroidery. We generally start out at 0.38, which our ruler really isn't going to show us, but that's just a little bit higher than 0.4. We consider that the average density for most things, and you'll get decent coverage from there. We try to adjust with underlay and things like that to get the right coverage, but as you can see, this distance between needle penetration and the next needle penetration is how density is measured. So that's why the lower your number, the higher your density is going to be. Now we can also look, as you can see this underlay under here, I consider that to be the same as this column stitch or this satin stitch through here. It just has a much higher density, and I look at that density there. If I would measure it, it comes out to be about 4.6, and so 4.6 is a lot bigger than 0.5 or 0.4. So you can see it's approximately 10 times as much, and so you should have about 10 stitches in between each one of those. I consider that underlay to be a density, and no different than the other. They both form the same column. One is just a much wider zigzag. So in our Floriani design or system here, if we are to adjust that, it's just as easy as selecting our letter, our whole line of letters, whatever we want to select, and coming over here to fill. And right here is our density. I have it set on 0.8 or 0.38, which I consider a good starting point for anything that I would embroider. And from there, if you wanted more coverage, you could lower it down to 0.36, makes it a little bit tighter. If you're still not getting the coverage, maybe you've got polar fleece, maybe you've got a terry cloth towel, something like that, rather than going crazy with our density and just keep piling more on, of course, then we would go to a topping, a solvay or the water soluble topping. But the other thing to consider is underlay. If we can get that terry cloth towel or that polar fleece pressed down before we put the column over top, then we can do with less density on top and still get a good coverage here. So if I would select a zigzag here, I could take my density here down to 2 instead of 4. Apply that. We've now got a zigzag density down through there at 2 millimeters, which would help hold that down. And we could also do a contour, which gives us stitches along the edge of our column stitch right there. And what that does is help clean up the edge, because our terry cloth or our polar fleece is not coming up through our embroidery without going crazy on our density. The underlay can really help hold your fabric in place. So hopefully that helps everybody out understand exactly how density is measured, how it's used, some alternatives to just going higher and higher to get coverage. Use some underlay. Of course, water soluble topping or the solvay is another great way to go for your sweaters and things like that. So hopefully that helps, and we'll see you in the next video.